Well, good evening, Boca Raton. It's great to be home with you. I am going to do this. We're going to turn out the light, just like we're going to do on the Obama administration in November 2012. Now, as Alex mentioned, this is a statewide campaign for United States Senate, but I have to tell you, today is a special day being here in Boca Raton because it means one thing. I am going to get to sleep in my own bed tonight. Florida is a big state, and so it is great to be home. It is great to be amongst so many friends and familiar faces, people who I had the privilege and honor of serving as a member of the Florida legislature for 8 years, and truly it was a tremendous opportunity. And so I say thank you to those of you who have been supportive of me in the past, and to those of you who are here tonight for the first time, or whether you are somebody who has been allied with the Tea Party since its first formation. I want to applaud you, because one of the questions that I invariably get everywhere I go around the state of Florida is, how is it possible to be a pro-life, pro-gun conservative from Palm Beach County? It's kind of like fighting behind enemy lines, if you know what I mean. And so being out here, especially out in West Boca, I can tell you, this is a great crowd. I am enthused because one thing I know for sure, in 2010, we sent the first wave of limited government leaders to Washington. In 2012, we're going to send reinforcements to get the job done. And I know things are going well. My father and his wife live out in West Delray in a similar gated community. I know things are going well because I just had the opportunity to visit there recently. And a few people came up to me that have never come up to me before. And they whispered, and they said, Adam, don't tell anybody. But we support you. And the reason why they're whispering is because they still want to be invited to all the good parties. But this is a critical time in our nation's history. This is a critical time in our nation's history, and I think what we see every single day, whether it has been what is going on with our deficit and our national debt, whether it has been watching America deteriorate on the global stage, whether it is watching our moral values and the family continue to break down, these are the things that are happening. But I will tell you this, I am inspired now more than I ever have been, because I'm getting to travel the state of Florida. I'm getting to meet people like those of you here in this room tonight. I'm getting to hear the stories about the people with hope, the people who are ready to fight, the people who are willing to do the tough things in order to make sure that America rebounds and gets headed back in the right direction. This is that time, and you think back over the history and the course of American history, and you realize this is just another one of those generational moments when we need to band together to rise to the challenges like those before us rose to theirs. This is that time. And so as I've been traveling the state and having the opportunity to meet with so many people and hear their stories, there has been one particular group that I have to tell you that has really touched my heart, that has really made me wake up every single day with the passion and the energy and the determination to go out and say the tough things that need to be said, even if they're not popular. Those are people who I've met who came here from foreign lands. If you think about it, those of us who were born in this country, we won the lottery. We're lucky. It's the people, though, who came to America, who fled Eastern Europe, who fled Russia, who fled communism, who fled from Cuba to the United States and immigrated from other places where they fled from dictatorships. Those are people right now, and there may even be some of you in this room tonight who have relatives who resemble that story. But those are the people right now who are shaking their heads, who are the most distraught of anyone, because they've seen what happens.
That's right.
They've seen how this turns out. They understand what happens when government grows too big. They understand the rules of history. Great societies decline when freedom gives way to dependency. And that's what we're fighting right now. We are fighting a three-front ideological battle for the heart and soul of this country. And this is that line in the sand moment. This is that time that we want to be able to look back and say that we answered the call. We have some younger generations in this room too. So we're spanning from young to old in this room, everyone here understands it. But what we've seen in America, and more recently, is we've watched as the deterioration of the family, the breakdown in America's culture, has led to this over-reliance on government. It's created the dependency society in America. It's led to the taxes and the spending and the borrowing that's been required to sustain it. And those dollars continue to pile up and mount up to astronomical deficits, and now a $14+ trillion national debt, which I would tell you jeopardizes our nation's very own sovereignty and has also become America's greatest national security threat. This is a time for us to send a message. This is a time for us, all of us gathered here in rooms like this, all across the state of Florida and all across the country. Because the window of opportunity is narrowing. We are headed in the wrong direction. Barack Obama was not kidding around when he told us during the 2008 presidential campaign that he wanted to transform America. The problem is that he's transforming it into something that is unrecognizable to us, to those of us who believe in limited government principles, to those of us who believe in the spirit of the individual, not the power of the state. And so that's why we need to fight. You know, one thing I've learned too as I've traveled the state of Florida is that Floridians aren't looking for Republicans and Democrats to simply split the difference. They're looking for leadership. And it's not enough. It is not enough simply to oppose bad policies. I can tell you this, with the Obama administration, there are enough bad policies for us to continue to oppose. But we need to lay out our vision for the future. Now, I know just recently President Obama was interviewed, and he made a claim that I think all of us would agree with. No one's better off today than they were 4 years ago. We all remember that from the 1980 presidential election. But I think the more important question, the question that I hope you will join me in asking every day between now and next November, is where do we want America to be 5 years from now? We have to have a plan for reining in the size and the scope of government, for cutting federal spending and balancing the federal budget. I was the first candidate in the country to sign the Cut, Cap, and Balance Pledge. Now, I know it's already out of the news and people have forgotten about it, but just think about how simple that plan was. Cutting spending, capping future federal spending, and passing a balanced budget amendment to the United States Constitution. And what did the Republicans do? We tossed it overboard. And for what? A plan that's going to add $10 trillion more to the national debt over the next decade, and that sets up this not-so-super committee that is beginning to meet, that is going to result in either increased taxes or significant spending cuts for our military and our defense. We need real leadership in Washington, D.C. It's about putting a plan together that says we are going to do the tough things in the short term, and we're also going to do the difficult things in the long term. What I mean by that is we have to go out and talk about what is necessary in order to preserve and reform Social Security and save Medicare and have a new modern system that is sustainable going forward in the future. Now, a lot of people, especially in this room, you're going to see a lot of advertisements. You're going to hear a lot of messages that are going to try to scare you. That are going to say, don't vote Republican because they're going to try to take away your Social Security or your Medicare. I have news for you, and I think each and every one of you know it. Those programs are on a path to insolvency. And if we don't do something about it, those programs are going to collapse on current beneficiaries, and they are going to burden future generations with crushing taxes and a lower standard and quality of living. People ask me all the time, Adam, how is it possible that you can campaign for United States Senate talking about, here in Florida, talking about reforming Social Security and Medicare? And it's very easy. I'm not afraid of losing an election. I'm afraid of losing our country. And if we don't do something to save Medicare for those currently receiving benefits or those nearing eligibility and having a new system for future generations, we are going to watch America's debt continue to skyrocket to higher levels than it currently is, and that is going to stifle economic growth. But remember this, our vision for the future can't just be about cutting. We do need to do all the things to rein in the size and scope of government, but we also have to have a vision and a roadmap for growth in this country. And that's something that I haven't seen yet coming out of Washington. What is our plan? I've been out there talking about the things that we need to do in order to overhaul our tax system. Have a flatter, fairer, simpler system. Get rid of all of these regulations that are killing job creators. We have to have regulatory certainty so that business owners, so that companies can make the investments, so that they can go out there and hire employees. We need to have a domestic energy policy in this country so that we can drill for more onshore and offshore oil and natural gas so we are no longer dependent on foreign sources. These are not difficult things for us to be for. But like I said before, people aren't looking for Republicans and Democrats to split the difference. We know that Washington is broken. And the same old compromises and consensus aren't going to fix it. That's why this election year is so critically important. Because Bill Nelson has been the biggest cheerleader for the Obama administration agenda. Supporting him 98% of the time on policies like Obamacare and stimulus and card check and cap and trade and the debt ceiling. All of these job-killing policies that are piling more and more debt on future generations, that are infringing upon our freedoms, and that are making our country less safe and less secure. Think about it from this perspective. Because I hear all the time as I travel, a lot of people say, well, Bill Nelson, he's not really that bad of a guy. Maybe he isn't personally. But for every vote that Marco Rubio takes in the United States Senate, Bill Nelson's vote cancels it out. That's why November 2012 is so critical for us to make Barack Obama a one-term president and to take back the majority of the United States Senate. Because I believe now more than ever that we can rise to this generational challenge. That we can reignite America's economic prosperity based on proven principles. That we can restore a national security platform based on peace through strength. So our allies know that we stand with them, like the State of Israel, and our enemies know that we oppose them. We have witnessed the moral relevancy of the Obama administration and what it has done to weaken America on the global stage. I think this is a critical time, but I think there's one last thought that each and every one of you would agree with, and that is this. It's not just about electing any Republican to Washington. It's about electing the right Republican. Because one thing we know for sure is that the problems that we face today weren't just created by Democrats. Republicans share in the blame. And what we need now more than ever are leaders in Washington, D.C. who have the courage to say what needs to be said and do what needs to be done regardless of political consequences. We need people who are concerned with what are the consequences to our country if we fail to take action. As I mentioned before, I had the tremendous opportunity to serve in the state legislature for 8 years. It was during that time when Marco Rubio was the Speaker of the House in 2007. And he selected me to serve as his Republican Majority Leader. And together we were fighting for a conservative reform agenda in Tallahassee. Now in politics, people have short memories. People forget that after the 2006 whipping that we took, or thumping I think is what Rahm Emanuel called it, but after the 2006 elections, it was the establishment of the Republican Party that was saying the best thing for Republicans to do is be more like Democrats. I didn't buy into that. I was the one saying, even back then, Republicans don't need to be less partisan. Republicans need to be more principled. And I think that's what we need now more in Washington than ever before. Now, I will tell you, when it came to these tough issues in Tallahassee, many of you remember that Charlie Crist was advancing center-left policies and doing more of the types of things that were more akin to Arnold Schwarzenegger. I was the one standing up, fighting against it. We fought against $500 million in unemployment stimulus and rejected unemployment stimulus that Charlie Crist was trying to accept. We rejected Charlie Crist's plan to block offshore drilling off of the coast of Florida, and we shredded his plans for a cap-and-trade agreement. These weren't things that were easy. These were things that weren't politically popular, and I know there are also some folks in this room who remember. Many of you know of an organization called CARE, Council of American Islamic Relations. Back in 2007, before many of us in this room even knew what it was, I was standing up to them. People were saying, Adam, you're being a racist, you're being an Islamophobe, you're being a bigot. And I was saying, no, CARE is a terrorist front group that is funding Hamas. Yep. I was in Tallahassee showing Obsession, Radical Islam's war against the West, and being ridiculed by these groups. So I can tell you, I've proven myself. I know what it's like. I know what it's like to stand firm in the face of opposition and criticism. I've proven myself to stand up not only to the Democrats, but to Republicans who act like them. And because of so many of the people in this room and your help and your support, I've proven that I can win elections in the bluest part of the state of Florida without compromising on my principles. And that's what it's going to take. That's what it's going to take to beat Bill Nelson. Because as much as I want to believe it, you cannot win a statewide election in Florida with Republican votes alone. That's why this is so critical, that we are able to go out and articulate our message so that independent voters, and yes, I met even a few Democrats in the room tonight, so that you're going to come along with us because you're more concerned about the future of this country than you are about a political party. So this is the time in the state's history and in our country's history when I think we need to fight. When I think it is critical for us to do the tough things. And so I'm asking for your support. I have been so honored and so privileged to have so much support and momentum. You heard earlier that we won the CPAC straw poll in Orlando last weekend. We're very proud of that. I'm proud of the endorsements that we've earned from some of the largest grassroots organizations that share these principles throughout the country. Groups like Freedom Works and Concerned Women for America and the Family Research Council. And I'm proud to have endorsements from conservative icons like Mark Levin and Eric Erickson from RedState.com. And one of the endorsements I'm most proud of right here in our own backyard is to have the support and the endorsement of our very own Joyce Kaufman. So I'd ask you to join our movement. I'd ask you to be a part of it. Go to our website. Sign up for our emails. Make a contribution to our campaign. Because this is a critical fight for the future of our country. And so before I conclude, I just want to take the time. I don't know where Pam went. But I want to thank Pam and so many others of the leadership of the Tea Party who have helped to continue to build this movement. I remember back in 2009, on April 15th, on the steps of the state capitol, when I went to my first Tea Party rally. And that was back when Nancy Pelosi and everyone, they were calling it AstroTurf. They were saying that this movement was just a flash in the pan. I've got news for Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid and all the others. This movement is real, and this movement is growing. And it's because of people like you. It's because of people like you that said, enough is enough. We're going to get up off of the sidelines, and we are going to fight to preserve the greatness of this country. And that's why I'm running for United States Senate. Because I didn't want to sit on the sidelines and watch America continue to go in a direction that I would be embarrassed about, that we would all be embarrassed about. That's why this is such an important time. I want us to be able to say that we answered the call, and I need your help and support to do this. And so I promise you this. If you send me to Washington to challenge the status quo, then together we will save the United States of America. Thank you all so much.